All right, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. I am doing my presentation on Gottman method, and then I'll be overviewing two relationships from the movie Eat, Pray, Love, which stars Julia Roberts and released in 2010. For the sake of time, I'm going to be brief about the Gottman method. I'm just going to highlight sound relationship house theory, which has 9 pillars. And so the first pillar is building love maps. And this is the foundation of the sound relationship house theory. It's about getting to know your partner's inner world, including their hobbies, interests, emotions, thoughts, personal experiences, capturing who this person is, knowing the ins and outs. And the Gottman Institute has resources such as questionnaires and games that couples can use to build those love maps. The second pillar is shared fondness and admiration. So this is about expressing positive feelings towards your partner, that being verbally and non-verbally. So we really want to include love languages, words of affirmation, quality time, physical touch, acts of service, receiving gifts, ensuring that shared fondness and admiration is sustained. The third pillar is turning towards instead of away. And this is about being responsive to your partner's desire for connection. How do we show up when that happens? When your partner tries to connect with you or you try to connect with them, is it and that being emotionally and physically? Are we turning towards them or are we avoiding and running away from it? So how do we turn towards our partner? The fourth pillar is the positive perspective. So this is all about giving your partner the benefit of the doubt. So it's important to remember from Gottman's lens that there's good times that you've shared with your partner, and how do you look for the good in your partner even when things are challenging and tough. So sustaining a positive perspective. The next pillar is managing conflict constructively, and he really depicts this through the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, that being the criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. And these are the 4 negative communication patterns that can damage a relationship. The next pillar is making life dreams come true. So this is really depicted by what are our goals? What's our shared vision? How can we be aligned here and to feel like a team together? So being able to be aligned in that way. Next is a shared meaning system. So the way I depict this and understand this is it's a value system of finding common ground and building a life together with that alignment. So my value system and their value system, how connected is it in order for us to sustain and deepen our connection with one another? And then lastly, the 8th and 9th pillars, they go together. It's trust and intimacy. And this is all about feeling confident about your partner, that they're there for you, that you can rely on them. You feel that there's honesty and trustworthy, and that you're able to make mistakes and they forgive you, and they make mistakes and you forgive them, in order to build trust and intimacy with one another. And so those 9 pillars really make up that sound relationship house theory. And so we're going to use this to understand the 2 relationships that I'm going to talk about in this couple's case conceptualization. So again, this is about the movie Eat, Pray, Love. It's starring Julia Roberts, and the character's name is Elizabeth Gilbert. And so Elizabeth Gilbert's going to be in both of these monogamous relationships. And just to give you just a background of her, she's a 32-year-old white American cisgender heterosexual female who lives with her husband in New York City at the beginning of the film, and they've purchased a home together recently. And Elizabeth talks about in the beginning how on paper she has, it seems, everything: a home, a husband, a successful career in New York City as a writer, but she's deeply unhappy in this marriage. And so I want to give some context to her background, some of her her family of origin, her FOO, and just note that Elizabeth grew up in a very loving and supportive family, but she also grew up in a very strict and rigid family. And so as a child, she didn't have a lot of freedom. She didn't feel like she could express herself in the way that she wanted to. And also her parents got divorced. And so she felt growing up that she lost her safe haven and that she didn't know where she belonged. So it's just some back story to kind of hold space for as I go through these two monogamous relationships. So the first one is with her husband in New York City. And when we think about the sound relationship house theory, it's very apparent that they don't appreciate one another in marriage. So the shared fondness and admiration, it's really been eroded over the course of many years in their relationship, which is 7 to 8 years. And Elizabeth goes along with getting married, knowing that she doesn't want to. And this sort of corrodes the positive perspective pillar, that emotional bank account that relationship had was in debt. There's a lot more withdrawal than deposits. So when we talk about deposits and withdrawals, it's positive connection being deposits, negative rupture and conflict being withdrawing. So that 5-to-1 ratio that Gottman talks about is certainly not there. And that really kind of ripples into all these other pillars of their relationship that Gottman has constructed. And so when we think about managing conflict in the relationship, they both engage in the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. He humiliates her in public with contempt and criticism by saying that she doesn't know how to handle a child when they're at a party and she's holding the baby of a friend, so embarrassing her in public. She stonewalls him after that and withdraws from the relationship. And she talks about how this is really common for them, for her to withdraw when conflict arises, not advocating for herself, ultimately because she doesn't want to hurt anybody. And so there's some family dynamic coming in to the present moment. But as far as Gottman's method is concerned, making life dreams come true, so visions and goals. So the husband wants a family. Elizabeth at that moment doesn't want one. Their vision, their goals are quite separate and different. And she wants to go on vacations and have adventures and not be stationary and settled. And he wants to be settled, to have a family, to go back to school maybe. So there's this ambivalence though that really clouds their relationship, that both partners maybe don't really know what they want ultimately. And so we see them divorce. She goes to India. And then she goes to Italy first, then India, and then Bali. And in Bali, she finds her boyfriend. And when we talk about Gottman method, building love maps, they're both able to do this because they have the quality time to do it together, at least in the first few months of their relationship. So really forging connection through knowing their interests and their hobbies and their personal experiences with one another, and everything that Bali has to offer them. And so that shared fondness and admiration, at least in the beginning of the relationship, we see that they really are able to verbally and non-verbally express positive feelings with one another. And they turn towards each other, with the exception of the ending scene where Elizabeth struggles to really open herself up when the boyfriend is wanting to take her on a camping trip. And so, she goes off. There's a rupture in the relationship first where she doesn't want to go. He's upset. She is scared. And then she has consultation from her guru in Bali and friends that she talks to. And eventually she comes around to opening herself up and engaging in this. And so when we talk about me or being able to support this relationship, given that it is the one that's most present in the movie, as a therapist, I'm really going to be looking at all of the 9 pillars, but really the shared fondness and admiration, because that's the one for Elizabeth that she really struggled with in her marriage. Being able to appreciate him, being able to sustain emotional connection and the positive perspective, and being able to make sure that, me as the therapist, I can facilitate and support their emotional bank account where they are putting together more deposits and withdrawals and sustaining that 5-to-1 ratio. And then in the course of our couples counseling, being able to identify the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse when it comes up, does she revert to some stonewalling, some behavior that she's done in previous relationships? We don't know as much about him, the boyfriend, but I imagine if he were to either do stonewalling or the other three, that we would work that out as a team together, and being able to give some tools to be able to interpersonally effectively communicate. So maybe utilizing some communication skills for both of them to express what their experiences, their observations, their feelings, their needs, being able to express that clearly. And then ultimately, also aligning them to make sure they have their vision and their goals together, because that was such a contrast in her marriage. So making sure that as the couples therapist, that is also worked on and acknowledged and questioned to make sure they're aligned with what they want in their lives. So one thing I didn't disclose is that they're both divorced. So the boyfriend was divorced, we know that, and then obviously she is newly divorced. And so they have this sort of patience that they've learned through their process, that they don't need to speed up their relationship. And so just being able to acknowledge that too, that's a really constructive way for them to maintain cohesiveness in their relationship. So if you have any thoughts about this, I'd appreciate any feedback you have. Thanks for listening. Gonna enjoy watching and listening to everyone else's presentations. Thank you.